Welcome to another episode of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we'll be chatting to Australian rugby legend David Campese. Good evening, David, all the way from Australia, Sydney. How's it going over there?
Yeah, how's it?
I like that. How's it?
Yeah, I know. I lived there for a while, mate, but I didn't really get the lingo that well. But how's it? Sounds pretty good. Not just now. When you said I'll call you just now, and I said to Dick Muir when I was at the Sharks, does that mean now or in 5 hours or 5 weeks? It could be now as well. So, yeah.
Just now, no. And how's your Afrikaans, David?
Next. Yeah, was it by Yeah, there we are. Corbus Beach is a mate of mine. I've got no idea when he talks. He's a big guy, and I just said, mate, you're going to speak Afrikaans, don't speak to me at all.
Excellent. So Springboks always had something in the side there that they could use just to keep it.
No, definitely, I agree.
David, how's the lockdown going in Australia? Different to South Africa slightly?
Yeah, it is a bit different. So I think that initially I think there's a lot of panic stations, especially in Australia. These so-called experts came out and said there's going to be 150,000 dead and all that sort of thing, and and it actually scares people. And we've had a lot of problems with people going to the shops and buying toilet paper. I honestly don't understand why toilet paper seems to be the first thing that actually goes. We've it's pretty tough, because all jobs sort of stopped. A lot of people have been laid off, and there's no sport at all. So in South Africa, you guys must be going absolutely bonkers. No sport at all. You can't watch. Obviously, you can watch the World Cup last year winning it against England so many times, but mate, it's tough. But for me, born in the 60s, I mean, that's all we used to do. As kids, used to go out and play and come home 5 hours later. You had the black and white TV. You didn't have iPhones, didn't have computers. So, for me, it's not bad. But obviously, with the kids, they're very active. It's been pretty tough.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've got 3 little ones here, and it's iPads and iPods and this and that. And, I mean, if we didn't have that kind of stuff, I'm not sure how they would keep themselves entertained, because they're certainly not like we were when we were younger.
No, definitely. But that's society, isn't
it? Yeah, absolutely. David, you've had an amazing rugby career, and we'll go through a lot of it during the discussion. But you started playing rugby league at the age of 8. Rugby league and not rugby union.
Yeah, well, see, in Australia, we've got New South Wales country back in the 60s and 70s was rugby league. I come from a very small town near Canberra called Queanbeyan, 21,000 people. My dad's Italian, came out from Italy, had no idea about sports, didn't speak English, and married my mum, who lived in the same streets. They built the house. So playing rugby league at school, because back in those days, rugby league was the major sports in Australia, in New South Wales country areas. So got to play rugby league, played from 8 to 16. I trialled for the Australian schoolboys in rugby league, believe it or not, at halfback. And I remember I used to wear running spikes with a couple of rugby studs in the end of it. But then, so that was part of growing up. That was the major part of sport in Australia. If you think about New South Wales country, rugby union was really a private school sport. And obviously going to a public school, you never really heard of private schools. That's a total different area.
Okay. And then at 16, you gave up rugby league for golf. That's a
Well, not really. Yeah, I didn't really give up. What I did was I played golf. I played golf since I was 12, and I lived 100 metres away from a golf course. I used to go down there and practice, and I used to hide in this sort of creek, and everybody hit the ball in the creek, and I'd go and steal them. So that's how I got into golf. Don't tell everybody.
Excellent.
But I used to go down and play a fair bit, and I still played rugby league. At 16, I played rugby league in the final. And we lost, and they sort of blamed me for losing. And I was sitting there thinking, I don't actually need this, And what I did was I had enough of that. Played at school, rugby league. I played golf, won a golf championship at 15. Played cricket, and then I played Aussie rules, played rugby union a bit, and then one day at 16, I just went across to the local rugby union team, which is the Queanbeyan Whites, and I watched fourth grade play. And after the game, I said to the coach, "Well, do you guys need a fullback?" And started the next week. So that was my introduction into rugby.
And 2 years later, you were playing at under 21 level for Australia, and a year later, you were playing for the national side. That's an incredible rise.
Yeah, I think it was part of not knowing much about the sports as well, because I think if you come up through the system, you get in awe of people. And I wasn't arrogant in a way. I just had no idea what I was doing, to tell you the truth. And we played in the Australian 21s against the All Blacks before Australia-Scotland. And we did really well. We won. It was the biggest score we've ever beaten the All Blacks by. And, so I was very fortunate to get picked in the 21s and then get picked in the Wallaby team that year as 11 Wallaby players pulled out from the year before. And, just happened to, mate, there's a lot of luck in life and you just got to roll with the punches. And off I went. And there I was playing for the national team.
And obviously making your debut against arch rivals New Zealand, and you scored in that game. That must have been a pretty special moment in your career.
It was. I still had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, but my first training session we played. It was at Taranaki, and my mates were the Ellers, and we the first training session we had a backline, and there was Dominic Vaughan, Parker, there was Mark Ella, there was Michael Hawker, Andrew Slack, myself, Glenn Ella, and I can't remember the other wing now, Peter Grigg. So we would do these moves anyway. So the whole idea was the back line started and Glenn Ella was supposed to chime in the back line, give the ball to me, and we'd score and all that. So we did the move and we finished and I scored, and Glenn Ella's back at halfway. And his brother said, "Mark, Glenn, where are you?" "Oh, mate, don't worry, I'll be there next time." And I'm sitting there going, "This is Australian rugby training." So I'm sitting there going, "Okay, this is very strange." But being very young and naive, I sort of sat on the wing, mate, and watched and learned all these things. And, look, first game was quite interesting against the All Blacks. And I think we shocked a lot of people because no one really knew how we would play, under Bob Dwyer, new coach, new style. And, it was quite interesting getting into the Test arena compared to these days where it's, you've got 70,000 people. It's totally different. You get a pair of boots, out you go, and you get smashed up here in the left, right, and centre.
Must have been great fun though at that age.
Yeah, well, look, it was, and that's one thing that I still look at these young guys these days, thinking, guys, to me, professionalism's always been your attitude.
Yeah,
it's never been the money. The money's great, but if you're playing for money, you're playing for the wrong reason.
Yeah,
and I think that we were very lucky. We played in a great era. You got like 20 quid a day playing for your country. You come towards a test match, you get 3 days to lead into a test match, and on Sunday you go home and play club rugby. And that was the fun part about it. You'd go back and you played for your country one day, and the next day you're playing with your mates. It's the best of two worlds.
And David, while playing for the national team, the Wallabies, you also started playing some sevens. And I mean, you had a great rise there as well. You were player of the tournament in 1988. You captained the team. You went to the Commonwealth Games with the sevens. I see you wearing the sevens shirt there.
Yeah.
And then you also became one of 7 players to be named in the Hong Kong Magnificent Sevens. How did you do the transition into that? Because I've chatted to both Carl Brown, South Africa's ex-sevens captain, and John Smith, and it's a very different game between sevens and.
I wouldn't speak to John Smith about trying to change the play seven, really. I coached John. I think John should stick to 15s. That's all he could do. Throw the ball in the line out, have a scrum, get a ruck. That's all he could do. Yeah. Look, I think it's back in those days, sevens wasn't really what it is like today. And we were fortunate that you could play 15s and sevens. Yeah. And my first year was in 1983 in Hong Kong. And the reason why it was so good was that you would play a test match one week, and then you'd drive in Hong Kong on a Wednesday night, and the team would go and have a few beers. Thursday morning, you train for 1 hour, then you go shopping in the afternoon. Friday would be 1 hour training, shopping on Thursday and Friday afternoons, play Saturday, Sunday, go shopping on Monday and go home. I mean, what a great life. But it was a different game where sevens was about non-contact. It was about showing one-on-one how good you were. It wasn't about showing how strong you were. You know, the game now I think is bizarre. It's really like 15s, you know. You get a penalty and they kick for line, they walk to the line outs. I mean, sevens is about speed. It's about unpredictability. It's about flair. It's about showing how good you are one-on-one. And that's what we were used to. And we were playing against the British Barbarians, the French Barbarians, and it was unbelievable. You play against Serge Blanco in sevens, Jean-Baptiste Lafont, Will Carling, J.J. Jeffries, Jonathan Davies. I mean, these are world great players, you know, and it's unfortunately that South Africa obviously weren't around those days because, you know, it was unbelievable. But for me, I think it was 1985, I got a chance to go to South Africa and played in Natal Sevens. And that's when I met Ray Morts, Rob Lowe, and all these guys. And South African Sevens was a total different way of playing. And I remember playing at Kings Park, and I can't remember who were playing, and the ball was kicked through, and I was coming across, and this guy was about 120 kilos running, and I kept on running. I said, if I stop here, I'll be in hospital. So I kept on running. He picked the ball up and scored. But that's the fun of game. That's what rugby, that's why we're so unique, you know. It's so opportunities to play in 15s and 7s. These days, obviously, it's very, very difficult because of fitness, you know, it's so structured. Sevens is about flair. It's about showing how good you are one-on-one. And, you know, I think we really lost the concept of what sevens is all about.
I think if you look at some of the teams now, I would say probably Fiji's the closest team that would resemble the teams of old.
Yeah, well, Fiji, that's the way they play. I've just been over there a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, it's always wet. They play with the coconuts. They go and throw the ball around. And, you know, when you see Fiji at its best, it is those passes overhead, passing to nobody. If they're very structured, they don't do as well. And so that's the way Fiji are. You know, they are the trailblazers. They have set the scene. But it's interesting that for them, I think the most important tournament for them to win is Hong Kong, because that's all we used to play. You know, so South Africa's taken on storm. They're playing great rugby. They've got some fantastic players. And if you have a look at the players they've got, they're all individuals. They've got great steps. They've got great speed. You know, and a lot of other countries haven't got that. They're trying to be very structured. If you're unstructured, you're going to upset the opposition more than anyone else.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about steps there, David, chat to us about the goose step. Where did that come from?
Well, it's quite interesting because I didn't name it. I think the first time I used it when I was, 8 years old, playing rugby league. And I think there was a guy called Eric Groth who played for rugby league for Parramatta, this massive guy. I'm sure I did see it somewhere. Anyway, so I'm playing this game on a Sunday. The ball was kicked to me. I saw these two kids run at me. I did something and scored up the other ends. I came back. These two kids had collided heads, and I said, well, obviously that worked. And off I went. I never practiced at all at training because I thought that rugby, when I got into rugby, like the sidestep, the swerve, you know, the passing right, passing left, kicking right, kicking left was enough ammunition to keep the opposition guessing, and then you can throw in the goose step. So I was very fortunate that I experimented and I had things that no one else did. But you had to use it in the right situation, and it came on the world scene, and all the journos call it the goose step. So I should have patented it back then, because I probably wouldn't be in this position now. But it's quite interesting how a lot of people use it in other sports. It's been used, and they always refer it back to me. So it's something that's I'm very proud of. But it's also, it worked when I had to use it on the field.
Yeah, well, it certainly did. You had an unbelievable career. You were even referred to as Maradona and Pele in one of rugby. Now, you don't get much more of a compliment than that. And I mean, there were many more. Will Carling said you were the best player ever. Paul McLaren said you were the greatest player he'd ever seen. That's quite some acknowledgement from some real stand-up people.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, because you don't, as a player, you just go out and play. And I think that's what really helped me, because it wasn't, everyone gets a big head. Yes, they do. They get arrogant. Yes, they do. But for me, it was more about the passion for the game. As now we, in Australian rugby, we're having problems with the Players Association and Rugby Australia about taking a pay cut.
Yeah.
And to me, as I said, growing up playing for the Wallabies, playing in Italy, I played against Nas, Joel Stransky, Yanni Brits, and all these guys. I played all these guys in Italy. And to me, it was more about my attitude was wanting to be the best. It wasn't the money that drove me. I could have gone to rugby league if I wanted money. So that wasn't the main issue. It was about understanding why you played. I mean, it's a great sport. You can go and play in Italy for 6 months, go in Australia for 6 months. You play for your national team. You can travel anywhere in the world. I was fortunate to go to the Commonwealth Games in '98 as captain for Australia. Now you can go to the Olympic Games. So realistically, there's so many things you can do. And the people you come across, and, then getting to coach in South Africa for the Sharks, coaching Brad Barrett, who played for England, JP Peterson, Francis Stain, Odwan Ghani, John Smith, Bismarck Duplessis. I saw Yanni here a couple of weeks ago playing for the Lions against New South Wales. I was shocked, and I called him. I said, Yanni, and he came over and saw us. So, what can you do in this sport that's, compared to other sports? It's actually very unique. So, yes, I was very fortunate. Bill McLaren was a great commentator, great mates. Jonathan Davies, Will Carling. I mean, you can sit here and name off many, many people that's, when I started from the 80s, Jean-Pierre Reeves, Hugo Porter from Argentina, Stu Wilson from the All Blacks, Dave Loveridge, Colin Meads, all these guys that you meet, and so I've been very, very fortunate in my career to be involved, but also meet some fantastic players and people.
You've played with and you've played against some unbelievable players. Can you name one or two who've been your toughest opponents?
Well, I suppose it's unfortunate we didn't get a lot to play against South Africa, because obviously the apartheid era and things. But for me, probably John Kerwin, obviously he was an arch rival. I played the All Blacks 29 times, only won 9, so it's not a great record. Then you got probably Serge Blanco. There was another guy who was probably, I thought was better, was a guy called Jean-Baptiste Lafont. You've got Gallion, the number 9 for France. You got Champ, Rodriguez. You had all these guys. You had Patrick Esteve. You guys probably don't remember, back in the 80s. This guy was quick. He was unbelievable. Dennis Charvet. You've got Gus Scott for England. You had Rory Underwoods. You had the Hastings brothers. You had the Welsh. You had Jonathan Davies, who I thought was an unbelievable player. Then you got the Irish. You got I'm trying to think of the guy who played Brendan Mullins back in the day. So, in those days, they're big names, but you learn something by playing them. You learn the opportunity, the different style of rugbies as well. And that's why you've got those long tours back in those, the Grand Slam 84, where we beat England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Yeah. The style of different rugbies you've got to adapt to when you go to Europe. And I think those tours were really missed. Obviously, the British Lions keep on going, which is great. And I think those long tours where you go over for 18 games, you play midweek games, I think that's where you blood young players. And I think that's really missed these days. Professionalism changed a lot. But to go over and play in little towns like Hoyk, where Bill McLaren's from, you go to Cork, you go to Munster, you go to Galway, and just the memories. And in New Zealand, it always used to be 11-game tour in New Zealand. Bloody hell, you got bashed in the week, bashed on the weekends. But that's what rugby's all about. That's what makes you a better rugby player. And I think these young guys these days don't understand what rugby is really about, because all they do is go from hotel to hotel for a test match. They forget, like going to Bloemfontein, Potchefstroom when I went to in 1992. You go to East London, and that's what's so good about, because you get the supporters who love the game, get an opportunity to see the people they see on TV.
I think that's that point that you make there. That is a big one, is the support. If you look at the test matches that happen here in South Africa, and it's always Cape Town, it's Durban, it's Joburg, it's Pretoria. The likes of London, Koch and PE miss out. But then when they do go to the likes of a PE, the stadium is full. And when they're in Joburg, it's not necessarily full. So I think that fan base is important. And I think that's growing from the days in which you used to play.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I remember rocking up to Potchefstroom and looking outside, going, "Oh, this could be interesting." And on the oval, people throwing these nachi at us. And I picked one up and go, "Oh, this tastes all right." So, but I mean, but that's what I mean. That's why rugby is such a great sport, and I think that we forget that. We, even now, in isolation, I'm trying to think in Australia here, what can we do? To me, it's a great time, because everything's stopped. You think about, it's a great opportunity to think about, okay, how can we become better players? How can we start to compete with South Africa, who are the world champions? How can we start to compete against New Zealand? But there's none of that.
Yeah.
It's like business as usual. I said, guys, we haven't got any number 10 in Australia that kicks right in their foot. Why not? Yeah. Why aren't these players the best in the world? I mean, here's a time now to go and really think about, how am I going to be better? What do I have to do to improve? This is professionalism. It's not the money. It's about wanting to, as an individual, get better. But why aren't we better? Why we are number 7th in the world? When I played, you're either 1, 2, or without South Africa, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Now we're 7th, and we're still relying on things that we've got to start to change our mindset. It's everyone else. It's not about the money, as I keep on talking about. It's about wanting to be the best. Why aren't, if you pick your World 15 now, how many Australian players would be in that World 15? In 1991, we won the World Cup. We had 9 players. Yeah. Now we've probably got none.
Yeah. And I mean, you talk about the professionalism and being able to kick. Now the guys are being paid a lot of money. They should be able to kick with left foot, right foot, any foot. I mean, I remember the days when Zinzane Patrick was, kicking a little grubber through for his brother to run on and score a try. Now,
Zinny was like, he did that drop goal against England in Cape Town from halfway. But Zinny, the skill factor from a number 8. You look at a number 8 then, you pick a number 8 now, half of them can't pass a ball.
Yeah.
Van Meelen, who's played for South Africa, a great player, but I've watched him for years. He can't pass. He's a go-to man for going forward. But you look at Zinny, you look at those players who can catch, pass, kick. It's a total different environment now. Coaches want players to be robots. They want them to do this and that. Mate, if you can keep the opposition guessing all the time, you're actually ahead of the opposition. Yeah. And I just think that the coaches want big guys who can run through people. I said, rugby's about finesse. That's why Colby last year was unbelievable, the smallest guy. And someone rang me up and said, what was your best moment of the World Cup? I said, Colby in the final, stepping inside Owen Farrell, who couldn't shoulder charge him because he can't tackle, and score under the posts. Realistically, that was the moment of the World Cup, because everyone could see that Farrell, if he can't use his shoulder, he's useless. Yeah. So, but that's what I mean. That's why rugby is such a great sport. You've got little guys who can still step and swerve, and he's got ability. And all those little kids out there who think you can play, you can still play. You just got to be smart. You got to learn how to step, to swerve, and no one in rugby really does that. It's just about running through people or doing the Sonny Bill Williams pass. It's not about that. It's about being smart.
Yeah.
Rugby's for everybody.
It would be very interesting to watch a game now of a team from your era against a team from the current era. And obviously, same rules and everything, but I think your team would run circles around the current guys.
Well, the thing is, they showed here a couple of weeks ago the Bledisloe Cup of '86, where Australia, the last time we beat the All Blacks at Eden Park, and my son Jason was watching, and I said, "Have a look. The scrum took 11 seconds. The ball was gone. The line out, no lifting. You throw the ball. If you won the ball, you won the ball. But every ruck, the ball would come back.
Yeah.
No, there was no blood. There was no treading on heads. Yes, some games were, but that was the game. That was how we played, and the referee would penalise if you saw something. It's not like every 5 seconds, hands in the ruck, someone over the top. The game, the law, the IRB laws have destroyed the game. People don't want to see a scrum for 5 minutes.
No, they
don't want to see in the World Cup final a team camped on the line, collapse the scrum, another scrum, and another scrum. Because the referee doesn't want to give a penalty, because if you gave a penalty, the team could kick a goal, win the game.
Yeah.
It's just so, people in Australia, we're very different because we've got rugby league, we've got Aussie rules, and we've got football. So we've got 4 major codes that we've got to compete with.
Yeah.
And if you don't entertain anybody, people won't come. And we've got a massive problem with TV rights. We can't get rugby on TV at the moment because there's no deal. So we need to entertain. We need to be different. And we just need players to go out there and understand the game and want to be the best in the world, and by playing a style of rugby that no one else plays.
Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. David, you probably were the best in the world in your time. You won the World Cup. You won a couple of Bledisloe Cups. As you've alluded to, you won the Grand Slam. Which of those moments was your pinnacle? Was it the World Cup?
Look, I think the occasion was probably, it was a big World Cup after '87. I played in the first World Cup at Concord Oval, and my father-in-law came out one year, and I said, "See that stadium? That's where the World Cup was played." And he was shocked. Yeah. Little suburban, because nobody wanted a World Cup. Yeah. The IRB didn't want it. So if it wasn't for Australia and New Zealand, we wouldn't be where it is now, the amount of money that's made. So, I think for me, playing for Australia at 19, had no idea what I was doing, was probably a big moment. The Grand Slam '84, Australia hasn't won since. Yeah. And then Bledisloe Cup in '86, we haven't won since 1986 as well. You talked about Hong Kong Sevens. '88 was my play of the tournament, and we haven't won Hong Kong since '88 as well. So, geez, I was part of a lot of things, but we're getting old and grey. And I think the World Cup, because of the moment, turning up, beating the All Blacks in Lansdowne Road, not let them score a try was probably a massive moment. But then you still had another game to go. And I think if you talk to everyone who made a World Cup final, you can't get physically or mentally stronger. You just got to turn up. It's mentally draining. And look, I was fortunate to play in South Africa, travel the world. I was just fortunate to play for Australia. Yeah. And that's for me was important. I tried my best every game, and because you never know when you're going to get drops, and I eventually got drops when I got a bit older. But Commonwealth Games in '98, Commonwealth Games in '98 as well. And I still remember after the first day, we all stayed in this village, and we came back to the village and we went to the canteen area, and there was a guy called Viv Richards. Yeah. And I've gone, oh God, there's Viv Richards. And he came up and said, "Hello, David Campese, how are you?" I said, "Actually, he knows who I am." So moments like that are priceless.
Yeah.
And that's where I met my wife's brother, Dale Benkenstein, at the 98 Commonwealth Games as well. So there we go.
And the
So,
rest
yeah,
is...
look, you get an opportunity to meet people, and, Commonwealth Games was fantastic. Obviously now the Olympic Games, obviously I wasn't around, but there's so many things you can do, and I was very fortunate to be part of a lot of great moments in Australian sport.
And David, you're still involved in rugby now? You running an academy?
Yeah, I've got my own academy. I'm actually the ambassador for Australian rugby at the moment. We're bidding for the 27 World Cup. Obviously, everything's put on hold at the moment, but I've got my own academy, which I go around. I've been working for a university called Newcastle University as an ambassador as well, doing rugby, coaching there, helping out their teams. But yeah, I was supposed to do a couple of clinics this week, but obviously it's been put on hold. So hopefully when we get back, that I'm basically go around the country and coach them some of the things that rugby's about, a lot of culture, understanding of the players, why you want to play rugby, who your best player is, and what does he do? Why don't you, what do you got to learn from that player? And it's quite interesting that in Australian rugby that we have a big problem where a lot of the kids have got no idols in their sport because they can't watch it on TV. Or if they are, there are a lot of Kiwis. So it's very, very frustrating. But look, it's quite good to be involved. I do try. I've been around Australia for the last 2 years coaching. I got endorsed by Rugby Australia, so I thought I'd work with the union instead of against them. But it's just frustrating watching now that firstly people don't know who I am, which is a bit of a shame. Because the game's moved on, and I just think that we need to get a lot of knowledge back into the game, and I think that's where Australian rugby is over the years, not this sort of period, but over the years, didn't get the ex-players involved to show, pass on their knowledge for the game. And I think that's our biggest problem at the moment. The players don't actually know what they're doing on the field.
I think that, I think that is a problem there, because in South Africa, everybody knows who David Campese is. And, now a lot of the players that have played are still involved, either in coaching capacities or in on TV capacities or various capacities. So I think we do have it right. We have problems filling the stadiums because we have every match on TV. So it's a bit of an adverse, sort of different problem to what you guys have. But yeah, I can show you.
Yeah, look, it's hard because obviously the Super Rugby's changed a lot of things. And even Alan Jones, the ex-coach on radio, says who are the Bulls? It's Northern Transvaal. He goes by the Crusaders. It's the old names. New South Wales, not the Tars, it's New South Wales. It's Queensland, it's not the Reds. He's looking at, because he's traditional.
Yeah.
And, like last year, I think it was the concept of the Superman, the Captain America. What a great initiative. You've got to think of ways to get the young kids involved. And, and I think that's, yes, you got it on TV. Maybe, because I remember we used to play New South Wales, Queensland back in the day. That's all we had. We had two teams. So if you think about, we won the World Cup 91 with two teams, the Grand Slam with two teams, the Bledisloe Cup with two teams, New South Wales, Queensland. But it made it easier because all the combinations were in two teams. So it made it a lot easier when you came together. But now, you maybe in those days, they used to make sure the coverage, if the game was in New South Wales, they would delay it by an hour, but in Queensland it was live. So therefore, the people had to go to the stadium, if you're a true rugby supporter.
Absolutely.
But they need to see the stars week in, week out, and it's like the All Blacks. The All Blacks go to Cape Town. It's like for them, it's a home game. Because it's so many colours and all that. They went through that era where they didn't like Saturday. They went because the parents supported the All Blacks. So, that's part of rugby history, But now, obviously, being the world champions, it's going to be very tough because everybody wants to beat you. And you're playing the best teams in the world week in, week out, which is very, very difficult, But I just think the young kids have got to understand why they play the game. It's not about the glory It's about actually enjoying the game. You know, that's why I played. I played because I love rugby. And, you know, we got 20 quid a day. It wasn't like the millions and millions these guys are getting now. In the World Cup 91, we got a kick in the backside. We got a decanter.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't about getting paid. You don't offer more money because that's, you know, to me, it's sending the wrong message. It's about being proud, Australian, South African, New Zealand, or English to play for your country. And that's the ultimate.
I think a lot of professionals do miss that message. And there's a lot of youngsters that, I mean, for one, I'd love to play for my country and I'd do it for free. There's not a chance I would ask for money.
Well, if you think now, if you all these players say, okay, well, you got to take a pay cut. Well, I'm not playing. I said, okay, well, we'll just, especially in South Africa, there's another probably 20, 30 players you can go and get who'd be just as good.
Yeah.
You know, who would actually love to get an opportunity to put their national jersey on. You know, it is tough times. It is very different. And, you know, professionalism we went from amateur to professional overnight. You got to remember that.
Yeah.
Overnight. We changed. So totally bizarre. You know, the IRB, I think back then could have actually made it a lot easier. Slowly, you know, if you did a book or you get paid and slowly introduce that. But the players were just dumbfounded, not understanding what professionalism is, you know, and I still don't think, you know, what is professionalism? Is it because it's the money? It's not the money. There's a lot of other things that go along with being professional, your attitude, you know, off the field, being understanding that people are going to follow you. They're going to take photos of you. You've got to be, you're an ambassador for your country. And I think that's why we were very respectful and understanding that, you know, people saw you as a player, but off the field, they judged you more because they knew what you could do on the field. But off the field, you've got to be an ambassador for your country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. David, it's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time today on Sport.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Say hi to everyone in South Africa. All the Sharks players are starting to play pretty well, I see.
Yes.
You know, it's great.
It's
fantastic.
Years, but they might be up there for the Super Rugby title this year if it continues.
It'd be great to see another South African. So as long as they 1 week in South Africa, then they've got to fly somewhere around the world and, you know, time zones and all that. So it's very tough, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brilliant, David. Okay. Thank you so much for your time. It was superb.
You're welcome, Adam. Mate, all the best. Take it easy, eh? Ciao.
Look out for tomorrow's edition of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we'll be chatting to South African hockey player Lisa Dietlefs.